Hello and welcome to another step-by-step how-to tie tutorial video. This is the Miss Westwood, a variation. This is tied on a size 2. This is a Mustad 3366 Sproat hook. For a tying thread, I'm using this bright fluorescent green flat waxed floss. The body and tail are all bucktail, starting with red, kind of using a scarlet portion of this, followed by some white. To add a little bit of color, I'm using a Chartreuse bucktail, because as we know, if it ain't Chartreuse, there ain't no use. A little bit more color, I'm using the natural tannish brown, followed by a little bit more white bucktail. That's all it is. So let's go ahead and remove our sample, and we will secure our blank hook in the vise. And like all good flies, this will begin but with just a single wrap of thread. We'll continue that on, locking it down. We'll pause there, trim off our tag end, and continue our wraps to the rear. And we'll pause at the bend where we'll tie in our tail material. Once again, this is a red bucktail. I'm going to measure this out about a hook's length, maybe a little bit longer. I'll go ahead and secure that in. Some nice tight locking wraps. Come underneath, do a couple wraps on the hook, and back onto the material. This will help keep it from spinning. Alright, we're going to go ahead and trim this at an angle. Locking this all down, we're going to build up a little bit of a cone. We're going to cover all that material up. Alright, what I like to do is I'm going to come underneath and do a couple wraps a thread underneath. This will help just kind of keep that positioned in the upward position. Alright, now to start building our body, I'm going to start off using some white bucktail. This time I'm going to have the tips in forward. I'm going to measure this out about a hook's length. And on that ramp, I'm going to tie this in. Starting to the front, working my way towards the bend. After a few wraps, I can take the tips and split it on either side of the hook and fold it back. A couple more locking wraps. Make sure everything's sitting and adjusted. That looks good. And we'll hop down onto the hook. And we'll start building our ramp back up. Beautiful. Alright, next we're going to do some more white. Same as the first, tips are forward. Now I went ahead prior to recording and I aligned all the tips. I stacked everything and cleaned everything for the most part. Alright, about that one hook's length. So again, I'm going to start down here. Few wraps, working my way towards the bend, up that ramp, go about halfway, fold those tips down, and we'll lock those in. Okay, we're going to check, make sure we're still even. Looks fair on that side. Hop down that ramp. Alright, now we're going to add in our splash of color. This is that Chartreuse bucktail. And what do you guess? One hook's length. Beautiful. Start at the bottom and we'll work our way up. Fold material down and around. We'll lock that into place. Give it a quick check. Beautiful. All right, now to add the brown, the natural tan. Using that same hook's length. Got a little bit of white in there, not too concerned. Fold that down and around. Make sure we're nice and even. Really want to keep your material split to the top and bottom. This is a real slender, narrow profile. Here we go. All right, we got our chartreuse in, we got our natural tan in. I'm going to do two last sections of white. Still tying in, tips forward. Give my thread a little spin, help it lay flat. Fold that down and around. Excellent. And one last segment of white. Always check your measurements. One last flip and spin. And we'll just double check, make sure everything's even. All right, now we're gonna lock this all down, build our final cone, which will end up being the head. Now, I really like this fluorescent green for that inner body portion that gets exposed. But for the head, I really like the look of a nice solid black head. So we'll take a little bit of Pro Marker. And we'll work some black thread on top. Add a little bit more. It's always good to do this in sections. Let that build up, and we'll add one last little splash of black for the whip finish. We'll give it the old 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. We'll trim off our tying thread. We're done with that. We'll add a little bit of insurance policy and a little bit of slickness to the head. I'm using a UV clear thin. And we'll just do a nice, even, light coat covering the whole head. Beautiful. I get that good saturation in there. We'll zap it with the UV. We'll give this just a few seconds. under the light. Then we'll get it ready for the haircut. Alright. So to make it easier, we're going to go ahead and just spin this over here to this side. Because then I can hold this with my left hand. I'm going to give this an angled cut. Low in the rear, high in the front. This will be just an initial haircut. Then we'll come in and do some light trimming. Doesn't take much. Get rid of some of these big long strays. They just break off. Nice to have a little mix in there. Alright, we'll go ahead and spin our vise back around. And we'll address any little stragglers. Alright, I think we'll call that a thing. That is the Miss Westwood variation on a size 2. Thank you for watching. Be sure to subscribe. Happy tying, and with this one, tight lines.